Today we're going to look at assignment 12 based on chips and salsa sales. So you're going to write a program that lets the maker of chips and salsa keep track of the sales for 5 different types of salsa: mild, medium, sweet, hot, and zesty. Okay, so the requirements of the program says that you have to have 2 parallel 5-element arrays. Now it's very similar to the previous assignment where you use one array, or you create one array, but you're going to have 2. And there's 2 different types. One of them that will hold all the salsa names, and one that will ask the user how many were sold of each salsa. Okay, so the salsa names will be stored, initialized at the beginning. That's your first array. And then the program will prompt the user for the number of jars that will be stored in the second array. Okay, once all of the data is entered, then you're going to display a report that shows, it just basically outputs all the numbers that were entered, and then you have the total sales. So that's going to be the calculation. Okay, and then it's also going to display the name of the highest selling and the lowest selling salsas. In addition, we need to have input validation. We don't want negative values for the jars sold. So let's go ahead and start our pseudocode. First thing we do is input, processing, and output. Okay, but in this program, I want to point out that we are creating arrays. So there's array 1 and there's array 2. One of them is going to hold the salsa. So I'll just put salsa in the name, and then how many are sold. I'm going to put the square brackets to show that they are arrays. Then on the first one, you're actually going to initialize them as the names of the salsas. So it's mild, medium, sweet, hot, and zesty. Okay, now what is the input? Well, the input will be the items that you entered in the first array. And then when you ask the user for how many were sold from this first array. So basically you're going to read the first array. Then you're going to ask the user for how many sold. You're going to accept user input. Okay, now you know that you're going to be asking, well, you're actually going to be reading the array and asking and accepting 5 times because there's 5 different salsas. Well, that actually tells you that that needs to be in a loop. So we're going to indent these, and I'll go ahead and put the braces, the curly braces, so that we know all of this is in the loop. Okay, so that's what we do for input. Now, what do we do for processing? Well, we know we have calculations that we need to do. Well, basically one calculation. And that calculation is that you need total sales. So we're going to do calculate total sales. Now, how do you do that? Well, remember that we are going to have a second array where it'll count, or basically the user's going to input, and this total is basically going to add all of the second array together. Okay, so that's pretty much, oh, and another thing too is that we need the highest selling and the lowest selling products. So within this processing area, we need to determine what is highest, determine what is lowest. So just like we've done before, you need to compare the elements in the array, compare each one of them, and remember which one is the highest. Then we need to compare the elements, all of them, to see which one is the lowest. Okay, and then your output will be, now note that it says a report. So you actually want to create something that looks nice. So, think about spacing. So you're going to display the report. You might want to put a title. Then you're going to display all the salsas. But let's just say display salsa. And then let's say display salsa and amount sold. And since all this information here will be repeated again, because you need to read every item in this array and then in this array and display both of them. So you actually need this to be in a loop. You don't have to repeat the report because you just need the title once, but you need the loop to display the salsa and the amount sold. But also remember that these are arrays, so be sure to use the variables for the arrays. So I'm already using this as a variable, this is a variable. Just make sure that they are consistent with what's up here. So let me go ahead and copy and paste that. Okay. And also knowing that, going back to the processing part, well, we need to calculate the total sales. So every time that the user inputs how much is sold, well, this needs to be calculated. So actually, this needs to be inside that loop. I know that it is processing, but sometimes it has to be together with the input. Okay, then how do we determine what is highest and which one's lowest? Now, it's up to you. Basically, again, we need a loop to continuously go through the array. So this could be a loop here. So that it'll go through all the elements in the array. Or you might want to do it up in here in the first loop. It's up to you the way you want to do it. Remember, programs can be written so many different ways. And one last thing that we want to do, we covered all the display, the calculation, we covered the input. The one last thing that we need to do is input validation. So when the user enters the number of jars, we actually want to make sure that this input is a positive number. So you might want to do, well, it's up to you the way you do it. But inside this loop, you can have another loop that checks the number that's inputted. And if they don't insert the right one, it can just keep on looping until finally they have a number that actually works. Input is greater than 0. Okay, and it's up to you, because you can even say greater than or equal to 0. That's up to you, and that's all you really need in your program. So best of luck.